but it was only best of one, so we didn't really get a full picture of the matchup. But that was kind of the two playstyles showed going against each other, and it was an incredibly even game. So maybe it's not just a matter of aggression versus early game. Maybe both styles can be incredibly strong, but it's about mastering those styles.
Definitely, that's exactly what it is, Munchables. It's about mastering those styles. Both styles can be very strong. Both can be very successful. I mean, we've seen it before in East Asia. We've seen it at the World Championships. However, it's a matter of mastering all elements of the game. And if a team can become extremely aggressive, does it well, and then goes on to be very strong in team fights, that's the ideal situation instead of choosing one or the other. And that's what some teams do, such as TSM recently.
All right, well, we are into our first draft of this semi-final. It's SK going up against Fnatic, and it's Vox as the first ban. Vox, honestly, has had incredibly high priority across the course of yesterday, across the course of Update 2.9.
Yeah, and it's because he is one of those carries that just goes extremely well into the late game. And with the update for 2.9, the early game is extremely important. You can snowball a game extremely hard now, but it is also much easier to get yourself to the mid to late game power spikes and to be able to show up later on in the game, even if you have been bullied around earlier. So that's why the Vox is seeing so much emphasis, because it's one of those picks that can hold its own through the early to mid game and then just becomes extremely strong late.
The Lyra pick comes for SK, and this is a pick they played yesterday actually against Dynasty. They did very well on it. SK seem to have a really good understanding of the meta already in 2.9, and they're going for extremely strong picks that they think are the best in 2.9. It's very nice to see. On the side of Fnatic, they have been prioritizing a couple of different things. Lance, the top jungle meta picks such as Cruel and Rhyme. Now we see them pick up ARDAN. It's a great pickup for them because Netitoleta plays it really well, and it's extremely strong here in 2.9.
See how well that's going to do. This has been the classic two support picks that we've seen coming on through across the course of yesterday in both North America and Europe. Lyra and ARDAN have both had tremendous success. We'll see which one is going to be the best. I mean, typically in the past, we've always mentioned how Lyra, to some extent, is a counterpick to ARDAN because the Bulwark is so good into him. But it definitely doesn't feel like one is outright stronger than the other right now.
Yeah, absolutely not. Because while, yes, the Bulwark does stop ARDAN from being able to do what he wants, oftentimes the Bulwark needs to be used fairly early in a fight in order to prevent a carry from being able to do what they want to do, be able to jump up to the backlines. And ARDAN doesn't need to use his abilities immediately in a fight, other than maybe the Gauntlet is like the only ability you like to use right away. And so it's, yes, it does shut him down for that little bit, but it's a very short period of time, and then he can start using his Vanguards and Blood for Bloods after the cooldown has already been used.
Fnatic wanted to pick up the Rhyme after they banned the Cruel, so it's a smart ban coming from SK Gaming to take that away and not give them the much stronger jungle matchup, no matter who they would have picked up, just because it's Rhyme. However, it leaves KESTREL open for Fnatic, and this is a hero Tetno JJ played yesterday to an amazing performance, and he can replicate it here, especially since they're playing that style of passive early game, get items, then team fight. KESTREL works perfectly for that.
It certainly does. I'm curious to see what SK Gaming's answer will be going into this one. We've seen SK play a multitude of styles across the weeks in the Vainglory8, and I'm curious, we've mentioned a lot about siege compositions. That would work very well with a Lyra.
Yeah, it definitely would. You can have a lot of pressure in the early game with the Lyra. You get that little bit of sustain, so if you are pushed a little bit too far forward, you can always just back off. They're going to take this Reza. That's a very aggressive pick for Tyrus, which is something I'm going to be really keep my eyes on. Tyrus has been phenomenal in the jungle, and if you put him on a playmaking hero, he can absolutely take over a game.
The Reza is a pick we saw much more significantly in North America yesterday, but we only had a few games on stream yesterday. It was only a small slice of the pie, so I'm excited to see how Tyrus is going to be able to do on that Reza.
And I mentioned SK are heavily prioritizing what's strong in 2.9, and they already have a very clear understanding of what that is. Reza is extremely strong in 2.9, especially if you pick up an Aftershock on him. That is so much damage coming through, especially with the Jewel pickup. That is a lot of pressure in lane also that they can try to snowball with.
Absolutely. We didn't see Jewel on stream yesterday. It was played in the TSM game off stream, though. This is definitely still a strong pick.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the weapon power in general is so strong right now because people are still figuring out what they want to do with the Crystal. It is going to be a KOSHKA to answer, and I like the KOSHKA into the Reza just because at level 1 you have a very clear advantage. Once you start to get a couple of items, though, we saw yesterday, we saw this exact matchup.
Yep.
KOSHKA dominated the level 1 fight, but then all of a sudden Reza was very quickly able to answer and get right back in the game. So it means that these two junglers are going to be butting heads constantly through the first 8 minutes, and it should be a blast.
I was talking to Physics, who helps C9 drafts on the North American side, who played the KOSHKA into the Reza, and we both agreed that actually KOSHKA works well against Reza. It was more how Joseph played the KOSHKA that made it not work out for them. So here for Palmatoro, he can make a lot happen throughout the first 4 or 5 levels before Reza picks up his Aftershock. And then the Jewel, we did see it yesterday on TSM, like you said, but they did lose with it. So it's in my opinion, it's somewhat of an even draft. Is definitely going to come up to execution and whether Fnatic are going to be able to get ahead early on.
All right, so I have to quickly ask you guys before we jump into this one, who's going to be the ones on the front foot? Obviously, we've mentioned the KOSHKA is going to have to be aggressive, but Reza, once he gets his Aftershock, you can definitely be aggressive yourself. Is this going to come a lot down to the laners here? It's
going to come down to who gets the first movement, because both of these teams are going to be relatively squishy. They're both going to have a ton of burst damage. Whoever makes the first hit land is probably going to be able to kill their target before they can even respond.
It's definitely going to be about that. The only thing is that Jewel will have a lot of lane pressure against the KESTREL before KESTREL gets a few items, and that can be utilized for the side of SK. If they try to get a turret before KESTREL gets rolling, they could probably snowball that gold lead and try to close out.
All right, well, it's about time to get on into our first European semi-final. Hashtag Vainglory8. Let us know whether you're supporting Fnatic or SK Gaming. But without further ado, it's time to pass it over to Medic and Xscoundrel to head into our first semi-final of the day.
And Fnatic. Xscoundrel, talk to me a little bit about how these two teams are going to face off against each other as we get onto the Halcyon Fold.
I mean, SK have got an incredibly aggressive composition here, Medic. You've got Kavalifat on the Jewel, who, like the analyst desk was saying, I think Jewel's in a pretty good space right now. She's got natural pierce on her Thunderstrike. She works very well with critical strike builds, which, as we know, due to the lower armor, do hit a lot harder. They are going to be very hard hitting after they hit their first power spikes, that Aftershock on the Reza, the Sora Blade on the Jewel. And they're going to be looking to put pressure on this KESTREL before she can scale up towards that late game powerhouse that we know her to be. So SK have definitely got an aggressive composition that can run away with it, especially if they get an early first turret here, Medic.
It looks like on the other side, Fnatic still have the possibility of being aggressive as well, though. The KOSHKA, you've even got a Dragon Ball contract on the ARDAN as well, giving you that little bit of extra damage. So Fnatic have a few options here if they do want to go aggressive, and that looks to be what they're doing early on, as Hegman and Tywers are going to get pushed back by NetToilet, TechnoJJ, and Palmatoro.
I'm sure Dragonborn would be very happy that you named the contract after him.
Dragon Blood, oops. Well, he's giving a lot to the community, you know. Sometimes
he has. I think he deserves the contract name. I agree with you. I think it's more fitting there, Medic. Yeah, I agree. I think KOSHKA can definitely put pressure on Reza early. Again, anybody that uses Aftershock right now is inherently going to be in a pretty good space in the meta, because Aftershock as an item has improved in terms of value. Palmatoro going so aggressive in the backside of the jungle here, though. SK are going to respond.
NetToilet is around there as well. Tywers takes a bit of damage as NetToilet jumps back in with the Vanguard. Hegman trying to do what he can, but Tywers is incredibly low. The Imperial Stitch was not enough to heal him up, and first blood goes to Fnatic. And here comes Kavalifat to try and join the fray as well. He's going to push NetToilet back. A good rocket leap across the wall, straight onto the face of Palmatoro. And that cat is not long for the world. NetToilet will be able to get off to safety, but it ends up being a 1-for-1 trade.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a fantastic push in by Palmatoro. He got both the backs. Actually did make that slightly worth in Fnatic's favor for that particular instance. But you can see KOSHKA, as it stands, base damage is very, very high. And when you're not looking at those item spikes that Reza really needs to come online, you're going to find that KOSHKA will have the potential to just out-duel Reza in terms of strict burst damage in the early game. Reza needs to chain his abilities together to get his heroic perk activated, to get the on-hit damage. And KOSHKA, with her movement speed, she can dance around that quite nicely. She doesn't need to pull any fancy tricks, just needs to be able to proc that twirly death to get those big attacks hitting hard. So you're going to find that Palmatoro will be looking to be as aggressive as possible against Tyrus, simply because of the fact that he doesn't really need too many facets to make these kind of trades go into favor.
Palmator is going to jump onto Tyrus once again. The Imperial Sigil does come down, but Tyrus is so low, just forced out of his jungle by Fnatic. Palmator did claim the Elder Treant as well for the second time in the game, so Fnatic just so far ahead in terms of gold. Already 1,500, 1,600 in the lead over SK, and this is what we want to see from Fnatic. They are lagging behind in the table in terms of points. They need these wins against SK if they're going to have a chance of going to Worlds, and while I say that, KEVALIFAR jumps onto TechnoJJ, going to get traded back by NetToilet. The active camo coming out as Palmator comes in from the side as well, but Fnatic unable to find their man.
And this is really good because this has all been facilitated from Palmator and NetToilet's early aggression. I think it's a really good way to put pressure onto Reza early on. Reza, like a lot of people know, he needs specific item spikes to come online. He's all about that on-hit damage that you do, that you get when you chain your abilities together. You've got to land a Scorcher, get your heroic perk activated, and then obviously look for the aftershock proc too. And you see Palmator is really abusing that, because at this stage of the game, like we've said, he's going to be stronger. And that's allowing less lane pressure to come through. Suddenly Hegman is drawn to the jungle to support Tyrus, and this ability to chain KEVALIFAR and the Lyra together to push the lane heavily against TechnoJJ is starting to unravel, which means the ability to take that first turret is slowly being diminished by SK, and it's a 2-level advantage for Palmator right now. He's stolen loads of SK's jungle away, and Tyrus is on the back foot massively.
Yeah, Palmator has more than double the farm of Tyrus at the moment. It's such a monumental advantage for him, and with that level 6 can look for the yummy Catnip Frenzy. He can jump onto one of these members of SK who have yet to pick up that many reflex blocks. I only see one on KEVALIFAR thus far, so not going to be able to block that out too easily. The question is, can Fnatic use this early advantage? They're 2,000 gold up, but you need to start looking towards that first turret. You need to start using the gold advantage you have at the moment to actually snowball the game away from SK.
And what's really funny, Medic, is as Palmator jumps in onto poor KEVALIFAR, so low there. Maybe a one ultimate would be blocked.
A great reflex block there, and Palmator will be forced out the back of the fight, and Fnatic unable to find the kill. That was one reflex box for SK. The Imperial Sigil just about healing off towards the side as Tyrus is chased in as well. But still Fnatic unable to find inroads underneath this turret of SK. Tyrus now the target, and there's the kill that Fnatic needed, their second of the game. And they are eventually able to take down the jungler from SK.
Yeah, really good aggression by Fnatic. And what's so funny, Medic, is yesterday we were talking about Fnatic. We said if they want to have any hope of getting that world spot for the European scene, they need to be far more decisive and far more proactive than they were yesterday. What a way to start out against the current leaders of the European points on the VG8. By being this super aggressive, really facilitate. I mean, I haven't seen Palmator play like this in months. This is one of the best performances from Palmator that I have seen in quite some time. And he's going for a very old school, I think Von C kind of popularized this, where you go for the heavy prism, the eclipse prism, and then build into the aftershock, unless he thinks that the Shatterglass is going to be able to snowball in here, which might be the case. He's got a lot of gold to work with, though, Medic, so I imagine he's likely going to pick up the aftershock. But goodness, I mean, this is such proactivity from Fnatic, and this is exactly what we wanted to see from them yesterday, because they need to play this way if they want to beat the top teams, not only in Europe, but in the world.
KEVALIFAR takes a chunk of damage, but the Imperial Sigil will heal him back up. Hegman has gone Fountain first as well, so we'll be able to get double healing out with the Imperial Sigil, and that red button used just to clear out the wave as SK continue to stand on the back foot here. The crits coming out from TechnoJJ onto that Lyra as well, and doing absolute work, and Fnatic are still on that front foot. It's such a change. It's so good for them to be able to challenge like this. A great one-shot, one-kill, but the stun is going to land from KEVALIFAR. Good fountain use from Fnatic as KEVALIFAR perhaps is overextended. Palmator jumps in. The detonator from Tyrus will keep him safe for the time being. Fnatic unable to find the second kill, but they do chase in further. Palmator coming up huge for Fnatic, gets the second kill of the fight.
Yeah, he's miles ahead of Tyrus, double the farm, got still a 2-level advantage, and now TechnoJJ, Palmator, and NetToilet will look to push into this first turret. Hegman not going to be able to defend it, and goodness me, what a way to work off your early aggression. Palmator played exactly how you need to into a Reza, unrelenting, don't let Reza farm the jungle, because Reza is still a very slow jungle farmer compared to a lot of other heroes in the game. He will very slowly move to the jungle. He doesn't quite have the clear speed of a KOSHKA, nowhere near the clear speed of something like a Rhyme, and so Palmator is abusing that. He clears his own jungle in the early game, moves very quickly over to Tyrus, knowing that Tyrus just isn't going to have the ability to effectively either out-duel the KOSHKA, or even try and steal things away from her, because if you can body block the Scorcher and stop the heroic perk activating onto a jungle minion, well,
we'll have the gold mine go over to SK, but KVALIFAR falls straight away. A great gauntlet from Net2Let will lock up Tyrus. He jumps away with a detonator across the wall, but Fnatic are willing to chase in the yummy cabinet frenzy. Gets a double for TechnoJJ. I was going to say it was a good call from SK to be able to get the gold mine, but they pay dearly for it.
Yeah, they do get that global gold though, and they only give up 2 kills, but it's not the worst in the world. I say that almost. Hegman gets caught out at the end there. And another thing, because of this aggression and because of the starvation of gold, is that classically, and this is a North American old wives' tale, but not really an old wives' tale, most North Americans say that when you play against a KOSHKA, everybody of value needs to have a reflex block by the time that KOSHKA is level 6. The unfortunate aspect of this game was that because Tyrus was so starved of gold, and because Palmotoro got so ahead because he stole so much farm away, he was accelerating his level 6, and Tyrus didn't have the gold to invest in the reflex block. So there's been a massive period of the game, longer than you would usually see in pro games, where Palmotoro is actually getting massive work done with this yummy catnip frenzy, simply because the enemy team didn't have the gold to invest in things like reflex blocks super early on. Tyrus has now got it, but it's 9 minutes into the game, and the damage is kind of already been done at this point. Medic.
Yeah, Palmotoro now has a broken myth alongside that aftershock, so he is doing a huge amount of DPS in these fights when he can jump onto the squishier targets. Alongside that, Net2Let's got a Shiver Steel for himself, so just trying to keep on these targets from SK. We'll have to see if Fnatic are able to push for this next turret, because SK are still able to slowly get back into this game. If they can slow down the tempo, if they can get some gold back in their pockets, maybe later on they can fight into Fnatic.
Look at this though, Net2Let has gone for a Shiver Steel. Not only is that going to help him peel the Jewel away from his Kestrel, but he's also going to be able to use that to facilitate Palmotoro, who takes a bunch of damage.
Great gauntlet as well, hits onto Hegman and KVALIFAR. Palmotoro gets the kill onto the Razor, actually keeping himself alive off towards the side, eventually falls, and now Fnatic will just chase away down towards the bottom side. TechnoJJ retreating from Hegman and KVALIFAR, who are willing to continue chasing in on this. Net2Let is low, as is TechnoJJ. The slowed onto him, but the Thunderstrike doesn't hit from KVALIFAR, and SK will be happy with the 1-for-1 trade.
It's interesting that Net2Let doesn't really need to go Crucible this game. There's no massive need for an Atlas Pauldrons, although I might have considered some armor against the Jewel, given the Pierce that she has. And he choosing to go for the Shatterglass second, so not Shatterglass, the Shiver Steel second, really feels like he's playing a very aggressive, snowbally style of captain here, but also has that ability to, like we said, peel the TechnoJJ away. And obviously this is a very heavy melee composition coming from SK. You can land a couple of those Shiver Steel hits onto a Reza or onto KVALIFAR. You're going to slow their mobility, and especially Reza, slowing down that mobility in any way, shape or form is going to keep your Kestrel just a little bit safer in these fights. Fnatic kind of picked off more than they could chew right there, but they do have a massive gold lead to work with at this point in time. Have kind of slowed off the accelerator right now, Medic, though, so have to keep our eyes on them, because they've been prone to this before. Sometimes they've had this early aggression bout and then have kind of got that first turret, then haven't really figured out what to do with it, as we just get a pause coming through. So I want to see Fnatic figure out what they need to do.
Feels like there's a bit of a tempo shift for Fnatic as well. They move from having Palmotoro as the early aggressive jungler, getting in the faces of Tyrus and of SK, and now it's on TechnoJJ to start carrying these fights. It's more of a protective front line who can do a bit of DPS, and TechnoJJ is sitting at 4-0-1 with a Tyrant's Monocle, with a Sorrow Blade, needs to be landing those glimmers and actually winning these fights for Fnatic.
Yeah, he's really actually kept on par with KVALIFAR, which is the more on KVALIFAR's side is impressive. KVALIFAR miles are behind in CS, but also, he's managed to keep in terms of items fairly level with TechnoJJ. I mean, TechnoJJ is sitting on about 800 gold more than KVALIFAR in the bank right now, but you have to respect the damage output of KVALIFAR, and with Tyros going towards his broken myth, you'll also have to respect that. But you're right, TechnoJJ feels like he's not quite having the same impact as Palmotoro right now, and Palmotoro has now invested in some defenses. I think that was one of the criticisms that we could have had. He very quickly rushed towards that broken myth, leaving the fact that when you get towards that mid game and you lose that snowball potential, once you're in there and not quite doing the damage that you were earlier, you go down very quickly, which is kind of what we saw with him earlier. He went down super quickly to a couple of Thunderstrikes from KVALIFAR. So Palmotoro now investing in some defenses and picking up the infusion. You feel like Fnatic are gearing something here.
Is there a way that SK, hold out this game? Because they're the 4-week consecutive winners. That's not the best way of phrasing that. I might just start this whole sentence again, Xgander. We're going to rewind just to the back to the start of it. Is there a way that SK hold out on this one? Because they've won 4 consecutive weeks of VG8 in Split 1. Now they're looking for their 5th in a row. Can they actually have that comeback story? Can they mount a comeback here against Fnatic in this game 1?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, KOSHKA, as most people know, especially now that the Broken Myth has changed, you don't scale up in these fights with the Broken Myth stacks. KOSHKA does fall off, so her flat damage, her scalings, they don't favor a late game carry hero. She often accelerates or excels in the late game just due to having an ultimate that can always retain utility, especially if you're able to burn reflex blocks with a double gauntlet, for instance, which NetToilette might be considering with that Echo. But you have a very good late game scaling damage output team in general from SK, and they've got a Lyra who provides excellent sustain in the fights as well. So KOSHKA, if you can clear these waves and they can keep this choke point turret alive, because that's really the key one to make sure that their base doesn't open up, there's definitely a way back into this for SK. They've got the mobility very easily to chase down TechnoJJ if they find the right opportunities. So I wouldn't count SK out just yet. They may look like they're on the ropes, but the ropes are very, very stretchy. There's always that swing back.
A lot of elasticity in those ropes at the moment. Still a 3,000 gold lead though for Fnatic, and they'll be just wanting to get this one last fight. Already Palmator at level 12. Tyrus is only level 9. That's a 3-level advantage in the jungle for Fnatic. TechnoJJ equal levels with KOSHKA, and NetToilette and Hegman are relatively even as well. So Palmator is still that big lead for Fnatic when it comes to these later fights. There is a gold mine on the board here if they want it. Palmator is going to jump onto KOSHKA. Bright Bulwark will slow him up, but already KOSHKA is dead. The fountain too late. Good Crucible on the block. Here comes the second gauntlet though, as NetToilette's going to jump in, follows the Arcane Passage to try and chase down Hegman. Tyrus fighting TechnoJJ down towards the bottom side, and he just about escapes, but not from Palmator, who sinks in the claws and gets the kill. 2 kills for Fnatic and a Crystal Sentry to top it off.
Oh, the coat of plate's doing great work for Palmator, soaking damage from KOSHKA, and with KOSHKA having no defensive itemization because you don't classically pick up too much on a duel, Palmator just shred through him. Now they're going to get another gold mine to accelerate that advantage. They picked up the Crystal Sentry too. Fnatic just need to keep searching for these fights. They hit another breakpoint with that Tornado Trigger picked up for TechnoJJ. Things are looking pretty good. The Echo has come through on NetToilette as well, a massive teamfight utility to have a double gauntlet, especially against a double melee composition that revolves around mobility. You know, their entire composition revolves around the mobility of a Reza, the mobility and the potential for a duel to jump and, you know, land on her target. With a double gauntlet with only 1 reflex block to work with, that's going to make it very difficult for that goal to be achieved. So I think Fnatic are setting themselves up for a win very nicely here.
Trying to push in on this turret. SK not finding the advantage they want, not finding the positioning they wanted. They did minion candy that wave as well, but I'm not going to be able to do too much with it. SK still on the back foot as Fnatic are now the ones prodding forward. They get the engage. The Bright Bulwark's going to come out. Palmator is still looking for the chase, but can't quite get in there. And Fnatic still willing to play this one a little bit slower. They are 7,000 gold ahead. And with a minute left on the Kraken spawn, it looks like they might just take away the sentry to make sure that SK don't have that advantage in their jungle.
Yeah, Palmator knows that he's now at a spike in the game where he can invest very heavily into defense. Metal Jacket has been completed, and with KOSHKA lagging behind on his aggressive build path, it just means that Palmator is going to be able to easily soak up damage in the front line nicely, and especially because Fnatic are able to force SK onto the back foot. It's likely that Palmator is going to be doing most of the soaking because he is the guy that is outputting the majority of the burst damage straight away in the fight, and he's likely the one that's going to be up in SK's faces, forcing them to pay attention to him. So with that Metal Jacket, it's going to allow him to be very beefy. He's got tier 2 shielding to help him duel against Tyrus, who, you know, really doesn't have the damage items necessary to make that burst on Reza significant at this point in the game. So I think they've itemized very well here for Fnatic. They just keep searching for these aggressive engages, you know, utilizing the fact that Palmator draws the attention while TechnoJJ does this, slams those glimmer shots in from the backline and forces SK onto the back foot.
I mean, they're cracking up. All Fnatic need is one fight before they can turn back towards that big objective. SK still just trying to work out a way they can continue in this game. Of course, it's only game 1 of a best of 3, so SK do have the chance to come back and continue their unbeaten run, but Fnatic are looking very good early on in this series.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if they play this way, they're punishing the Reza pick specifically. Reza is very strong right now, but KOSHKA has been emerging as a pick that works pretty well into her, and I think Palmator has demonstrated specifically why that pick is good. But Fnatic need to hold this throughout the series. SK are probably going to learn from this. They learn very quickly, they adapt very quickly in a series. Palmatori is going to start at the Kraken, they're going to force something.
There's the first gauntlet coming out. Kavalifar down low. Palmatori there as well with the block, with the Crucible on the Yummy Cabinet Frenzy, and Palmatori will be the first to fall. Techno JJ still alive. It's up to Tyrus to try and take down that Kestrel, but Hegman wants to just disengage this fight. There is a Kraken available. 1-for-1 trade thus far as Techno JJ is going to run back through the jungle, and Fnatic realize they can't take a fight in the 2v2 at the moment.
Yeah, Techno JJ again not quite in the position to land those glimmer shots correctly, and actually it's interesting that Tyrus decided that he'd turn around and run from Techno JJ despite the fact he was in close proximity to Techno JJ. He could use his B to dash round and dodge those glimmer shots. That was very interesting that he chose to back off from that fight, given they also had Hegman at a high energy value. Techno JJ slamming the glimmer shots in though.
Yeah, Hegman just base checking straight into Techno JJ and Net Toilet. The vision control just there for Fnatic, and Tyrus has to run away by himself. It's a good kill for Fnatic as they realized that the Roma just didn't know where they were and had to walk straight towards that Kraken to make sure it wasn't being taken. Speaking of Krakens, Fnatic are going to start it up. Kavalifar does have the big red button if he wants to try and steal across the wall. Can, of course, jump in as well, but it could be this Kraken just going across towards Fnatic. Palmatori jumps onto Kavalifar, and Kavalifar doesn't really have an answer to this. Tries to jump his way away, but here comes the Yummy Cabinet Frenzy from Palmatori, and eventually the kill for Fnatic alongside that Kraken, and perhaps this is the beginning of the end for SK.
And you can see Hegman as well, his itemization, he's gone specifically to facilitate a double melee sort of assassin type composition. He's gone for the war treads. The Crucible needed to navigate his way through the gauntlet, but he hasn't got any armor. Classically, you saw yesterday, we learned, Leon's second item, metal jacket on the captain support. It's specifically because you need that to be able to tank the damage from Techno JJ. Someone needs to body block on this composition against the weapon power Kestrel. Nobody has got any armor, so nobody is able to body block her, which is causing massive issues for Fnatic because you can't take sustained fights against the weapon power Kestrel when no one is able to deal with the damage. Tyrus found an opening.
Tries to jump onto Techno JJ, does get him low, goes into the detonator as well, but can't quite get the kill, and the active camos from Techno JJ just dodging around the side of this fight. Already we see the Reza fall, and now Kavalifar will follow shortly after. You have to feel Fnatic still in the ascendancy in this fight. The big red button doesn't quite kill Techno JJ. Remember that Kraken is still pushing into the base of SK. The one shot, one kill, Palmatori across the wall, and that will be another kill for Fnatic, and you have to think that is the end for SK, as Fnatic will just look towards these crystal turrets and towards taking the game from SK.
Yeah. Actually, I think maybe Hegman is able to back off here and protect his turrets. Palmatori is going to jump back in, but I don't think they quite have what it takes to beat out this Kraken. Tyrus is going to be up now. I think this is going to be Fnatic's opportunity to back out. They wanted to just distract for as long as possible to allow...
Should have done it, Scoundrel. Should have gone for it.
Maybe should have. They had the opportunity to dance around Hegman as best they could. They won't get the game here, but they've got everything but the game. Just that Vein Crystal remaining, and Kraken, she falls, and it's about 3/4 HP. So, if Fnatic can even just distract SK, they do have a weapon power Kestrel who will chunk through something like the Vein Crystal. They do have the potential to take these fights in their favor. They've got a massive gold advantage, almost 10,000 at this point. Breakpoints have been hit. Techno JJ is at his full damage output build. Net Toilet is now sitting on some armor as well, being able to tank what he can, and Hegman face checking.
There's the Arcane Passage, and actually will bring Palmatori into the midst of the team. Kavalifar there as well. Net Toilet down to half. So's Tyrus though. 2 glimmer shots to the back, and Tyrus realizes he doesn't want any part of this party. SK continue just to dance around that Crystal Sentry. Palmatori in the front line. A great gauntlet.
What a gauntlet.
Done. Tyrus there with the detonator.
Another great gauntlet.
Straight away, 2 good gauntlets. And Net Toilet has basically won this game for his team. Hegman caught in the active camo. A triple kill for Techno. And this will be the game for Fnatic.
That's not the first time this weekend that we've seen Net Toilet with some unbelievable gauntlets. He won the game solo yesterday with a gauntlet across the wall. And they're going to clean this first game up against SK. SK did go down the first game against Dynasty and completed a reverse sweep yesterday, so they are used to it even on this weekend. But what a game from Fnatic. Put pressure onto the Reza early in the jungle where he is weak with a slow clear speed. They made use of the KOSHKA's great early game, and I have not seen Palmatori being that aggressive in quite a while. And then eventually, towards the late game, no one had the armor, no one could body block against Techno JJ, and the damage output from Power Kestrel spoke for itself, I think.
Yeah, great stuff from Fnatic to take down the reigning champs. 1-0 at the moment, of course, is a best of 3. To break down just how Fnatic did it, we're going to hand it back across towards our analyst. Munch, take it away.
Thank you very much, Medic and Scoundrel. What a game coming out from Fnatic. I don't even know what to say off of that. We've got SK, who have been flawless throughout this season so far, and Fnatic, who have been struggling a little bit, into just an absolute whitewash coming out from Fnatic. This is a totally night and day difference.
Yeah, I mean, I said it's still very much possible to snowball a game very hard in Update 2.9, and that is exactly what Fnatic just did. They took this KOSHKA, they won the early game, and then they just completely snowballed. Like, Tyrus got completely denied throughout the early stages of the game, and then that translated into a lead in the lane as well, because all of a sudden Palmatoro was able to make plays across the board.
Exactly. I talked about the KOSHKA being able to bully Reza first 4, first 5 levels. Palmatoro did it incredibly well, and it's something that we haven't seen. Like, we talk about how inconsistent Fnatic is, and even when I was talking to Kvalifar, he was like, this team is a powerhouse on a good day, and it does seem like Fnatic are having a good day.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned how KOSHKA can bully Reza for the first 8 levels, or first 8 minutes. He did it for the first 12 levels in this game. Let's take a look at 6:30. This was the first double kill for Fnatic.
And this was where, again, Palmatoro already had himself a pretty sizable lead, almost double the CS of Tyrus. Aftershocks were completed for both teams, but it was just, there wasn't enough to be coming out from the side of SK to make anything happen. You see, Hegman got taken down by that one shot from Tetno, who, again, played phenomenal as well. You know, we're giving a lot of credit to Palmatoro because of how hard he controlled the jungle, but Tetno also played an incredible game with this KESTREL.
No, it's true, and Fnatic actually did a really good job of snowballing methodically. They played together as a team, they focused objectives, tried to stay together and rotate as much as possible. And we talked about how Jewel is strong against KESTREL and can pressure. If you have to worry about a KOSHKA that can come up and gank you because she's controlling the entire game and the entire map, you have to stay close to your turret and play safe, and that's what allowed KESTREL to get even further ahead and pick up those items.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at our next replay. It's another double kill coming out for Fnatic as they continue to snowball this lead into a victory.
And we see here, this was one of the team fights that were able to just jump on Jewel and eliminate her really early on in the team fight. Jewel tried to run away a little bit, and that's when she doesn't have her front plating. The weapon power damage coming from KESTREL with the double infusions that both KESTREL and KOSHKA had, and without any armor also on top of Jewel, there isn't much for her to do when she runs away.
And I feel like that replay is a perfect example of what a significant gold lead looks like. When you can dive beyond the Crystal Sentry and it still be a comfortable team fight victory, you know that you're pretty far ahead. Let's take a look at the end stages of this game. And this was some beautiful gauntlets from Net.
Yeah, 2 gorgeous gauntlets getting dropped by Netula in order to shut down what SK was trying to do. This is when SK, you felt like they were just on the verge of being able to come back into these ones. They were able to get some good damage down, but a big stun, the Net Nation comes through and immediately stunned again, not able to take advantage of that ultimate by Tyrus. And from there, it's just that quick and easy cleanup by Fnatic.
Something that I want to talk about, you mentioned how SK were on the verge of coming back. That was actually due to Fnatic infusing so many times during this game. They had about 4 to 5 different infusions during different times, and that is not something that you want to do when you're ahead because it actually stops your snowball. Fnatic, as a team that's ahead, you can afford winning team fights without infusing, and that allows you to advance your gold lead, get even more items on top of your enemy. We saw KESTREL, for example, Tetno JJ, he picked up his 3rd offensive item around minute 12. He didn't get his 4th offensive item until the last team fight, which was around 20 minutes. That's 6, 7, 8 minutes of not picking up a tier 3 item. And that's why you have to be more
conservative with your
gold spendings, yeah.
Absolutely. You got to make sure that you can keep that gold under wraps and keep on snowballing that victory. Well, Fnatic are now 1-0 up against the favorites of EU, looking fantastic in game number 1. We'll see if they can replicate that for game number 2. It's time to start to talk about the draft. Can KOSHKA go through again here? Can KESTREL go through again here? Honestly, I feel like all 3 of the picks for Fnatic did phenomenally.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to let the KOSHKA through, you have to have something that you're going to be able to answer it with. Whether it's in the lane or in the jungle, you have to have some way to deal with the KOSHKA. Both the Jewel and the Reza, early on, neither of them is great against the KOSHKA. The Jewel can rotate down, but when she does rotate down, doesn't offer up a ton of help, and then your opposing laner is going to get this huge lead. So that you have to have some sort of plan in mind for this pick if it's going to come through. Rhyme is one of those ones that can deal with it.
I mean, this is Fnatic on A side this time, and they're going straight into their jungle prioritizations draft. I mentioned it earlier last game. They have been focusing on the jungle meta top picks. The BLACKFEATHER comes through for SK to counter the first pick Rhyme though, and that can go into the jungle as the CP BLACKFEATHER that can do well against Rhyme. And why it can do well is because it can last hit over it. When you use your on point to secure a camp, it can steal it away from Rhyme when he's trying to invade and take over your jungle.
Honestly, when we talk about what does well into Rhyme in the jungle, it's almost always about being able to grab those last hits so he can't just steal everything away from you. Lyra going to be the ban coming out here from SK Gaming. We'll see whether that's what that's going to be answered with, because that's both of the captains we saw in game number 1 taken away now. Yeah,
and I would assume SK is going to look for a captain pick with their second pickup, because it seems like they're trying to deny the captains away from Fnatic, trying to make sure that their options are a little bit limited for Netsplit. As obviously the ARDAN and the Lyra are incredibly strong. Catherine taken away as well, so they can really limit this captain pool very heavily.
Yeah, I was going to say Catherine is what I was going to expect. I don't expect the Churn Walker to come through, unfortunately, for this team. I don't think they have had enough time to practice it since, especially they were at Mobile Masters, so they were playing on 2.8 for a very long time. And Lance is probably the more likable pick, especially since Hegman plays it really, really well.
See where they do choose to go with this one. As you rightly say, Hegman can definitely grab that Lance for himself. Should that be the pick they want to lean towards? They're going to go with the Kestrel, though. They know that that's a very comfortable pick for Techno JJ, so trying to deny that one.
Yeah, a little bit interesting to me that they didn't go for one of those captains, because like I said, now we have 3 captains banned away. Fnatic is going to get the captain for their team, so all of a sudden SK is going to have to be looking at a 5th captain at least, you know, and what other options are really big right now? You have, you can pull out the Finn. I still expect Lance to be grabbed here by Fnatic, most likely, just because that is has been prioritized pretty heavily. But then you've got Finn, Flicker, Churnwalker. That's really
you're running out of options.
Those are really your only other options. So
Captain Baptiste could be an option as well. That's something we've seen less recently, but always an option.
This is most likely going to be a Vox pickup here also for Fnatic, since they need a weapon power carry. Techno JJ did play it yesterday, and they won with it. With the Lance, it combines well. You can pressure, you can try to get leads early on. If not the Vox, they could go for Jewel that they just played against, but that is a little bit riskier.
That's a bit riskier, in my opinion, just with what they've already got. I think having that Vox, someone who can be relatively safe, scale up well, but they're going to go for a Glaive.
Something you mentioned
This
there.
is extremely surprising to me that they're willing to continue to run this Glaive pick.
Yeah, first Glaive of 2.9, so I'm curious to see how this is actually going to pan out for them. But by the looks of things, it's going to be going into that lane for Techno JJ as well. So typically, even in 2.8, we were seeing it more in jungle than we were in lane. Very excited to see how Fnatic can use this pick.
And what I like about it actually is that it's going up against both a KESTREL and a CP BLACKFEATHER, 2 squishy heroes that are easily able to... Glaive is easily able to get on top of them with his Afterburn to try and burst them down after they would have gotten a lead with the Rhyme in the jungle. So I actually like Fnatic's draft again a lot better than SK's. I mean, they could really do it and win the series here with this draft.
This would be a huge upset if it was a straight 2-0 for Fnatic over SK. We are going to see the Grace as the final lock-in. Obviously, an incredibly good pairing alongside a BLACKFEATHER with the Kestrel on the backline. How are we feeling about this one then? Because typically when we talk about BLACKFEATHER jungle, this is one of those similar to Reza where it takes a little while to pick up.
This one's going to be really interesting in terms of the positioning in team fights, because obviously Glaive and Lance are going to want to be relatively aggressive going after that Kestrel. But BLACKFEATHER and Grace, they're going to be looking to go aggressive against the members of Fnatic. So this Kestrel could actually end up being extremely vulnerable in these situations, and that could open up the door for Fnatic to take over this game.
It certainly could. It's time to get into game number 2 of this series. Let us know who you are supporting. Hashtag Vainglory8 on Twitter. Get involved in the conversation on social media. It's time to jump on into the map and get into SK Gaming going up against Fnatic. It's game number 2. Can Fnatic take a 2-0? Let's find out as we pass it to Medic and X-Scoundrel.
Thank you very much, Munch. I am Medic. I'm joined by Scoundrel, and we are on the brink of history, Scoundrel. SK unbeaten in 4 weeks of the VG8 in Split 1. Now staring down the barrel of a Fnatic gun as they are 1-0 down in this best of 3.
And this is a great position for the Fnatic to put themselves in. You know, they kind of have to roll the dice of miracles if they want to make it to Worlds in terms of points from this point forwards. But I tell you where a good place to start is knocking the current board leaders out in this particular game. Fnatic, if they win this week, you know, they're in a position where there is a world, maybe, that they find themselves in that top spot. And they've been playing like champions in that last game. Let's see if they can carry on. TechnoJJ on his very, very well-practiced glaive, and Palmatoro playing that rhyme, which we know is still incredibly strong. They're going to start inside to out, going to guarantee themselves that Elder Trion and move back through the jungle that way. They have a rhyme, quick clear speed. TechnoJJ should also get level 2 off this as well, so it's not a bad way to share experience.
And then get TechnoJJ into the lane. Of course, is a melee into ranged matchup in that lane, so it is a lane that we expect KEVALIFAR to be able to win on this KESTREL. How as a team do you then play around that, Scoundrel? Because it's so tough when you're playing a matchup where you are just outranged by your opponent.
Well, you have a lapse, right? So, I mean, in the early game, you're not going to be able to slip into instantaneous active camo as the KESTREL. You can use the afterburn in lane just to set up ganks very easily with the lance, and then you have the root coming out from Palmatoro, maybe just exactly like this.
Does get into the active camo in time though. Hegman there, still the knockback with the afterburn, and KEVALIFAR now on the wrong side of the house, the unfold. He's going to get taken down. First blood to Fnatic once again.
Yeah, I mean, how many times as a caster do you get to say something and then it happens? I mean, it was kind of obvious, I guess.
I set you up for it, man. That's how we do. That's how we do.
I mean, I've missed you. You've done it for me again. You make me look moderately smart at stating the obvious. So I think I'll take that. But yeah, fantastic from Fnatic. That's exactly how you want to play. Be aggressive with the lance and the glaive. It's a great combination. And then add the root of the rhyme in there. You've got a great ganking squad. And Fnatic have already taken that first gank of the game.
Like with a good Gideon wall, but he's going to fall here. KEVALIFAR getting a kill in return. Perhaps just overstayed a little bit there. Was too far forward in that mustache bush.
Yeah, maybe just a bit over-aggressive in his positioning, and a good rotation up from the Fnatic squad means they'll return. And now KEVALIFAR can look to push back against TechnoJJ here. NetToilette did pick up a decent amount from that. TechnoJJ takes a lot of damage, forced to burn that healing flask. Because you've got to respect a Weapon Blade start Grace. Because usually as a Weapon Blade start Grace, you want to be aggressive and look to go and invade the opponent's backs. That's maybe part of the reason why Fnatic went inside to out, to prevent the Grace invade. But you start to respect the damage that Benediction can do because of that Weapon Blade start on Hegman. He will actually chunk you in these early levels.
Once again, Palmatoro comes up to the lane just to try and relieve some of this pressure. Fnatic not had that aggressive early start we saw from them in game 1. It's going to be a little bit slower here. So I'm really interested to see how well they can actually translate a slower start into a win against SK, because they had an early advantage in game 1. They were able to snowball that away, but you have to feel when the teams are even coming into that 5-10 minute mark, that's really where we're going to have to see Fnatic step up. Palmatoro already stepping up, taking the Elder Trion for his own against Tyrus in that 1v1. And now SK are forced back a little bit. The damage onto Hegman as well, a great impale, the knock-up. Hegman's going to try and get his way away, but he will fall, and Palmatoro, once again going aggressive on this rhyme, gets himself another kill.
Yeah, Hegman didn't really need to rotate down. Tyrus had the on point, the decaying slow, the barrier that comes from it. That was enough. I think should be able to get his backs here. I don't think Palmatoro is going to overstay, and Tyrus won't get punished too heavily for that. But looking at KEVALIFAR in the lane now, he's having to ward away Fnatic, who are looking to go aggressive under this first turret. One thing that I think SK have in their favor is this gets later and later. You get the level 8 on the CP BLACKFEATHER, you get the extended range on your on point, you're going to have the glimmer shots. There is one facet of the SK composition that really trumps Fnatic, and that's just the range that they have. That range at level 8 for BLACKFEATHER and also for KEVALIFAR on these glimmer shots, it's going to hurt Fnatic if they can't find these engages. There's an engage.
Great route onto KEVALIFAR. He's locked up as well, but is able to just get out with the active camo. Good Gideon Waldo from NetToilette, and once again, NetToilette comes up big. He finds the kill for Fnatic, and it means they don't waste their time in the lane.
Yeah, and again, just looking to punish this weapon power BLACKFEATHER before she can get the instantaneous stealth. It's an area of the game where then it'll be very difficult to find these afterburns, because again, she can just appear on you at any time. To be NetToilette just going aggressive here, maybe with Palmatoro on that side.
Yeah, gets the flank in. A good double stun though with it. Holy Nova, the knockback onto Tyrus, but This BLACKFEATHER is so slippery, so easy to escape with, and I want to come back to that as well, because BLACKFEATHER we saw banned in every single game on day one here in EU. Tyrus has picked it up here, Fnatic have given it over to SK. It's such a strong hero that I'm surprised to see it get this far through a draft.
Well, it's interesting because the majority of what people see BLACKFEATHER to be strong as right now is the weapon power BLACKFEATHER route. Like, most people say that that is the more broken of his two build paths. And so with SK flexing him into a CP BLACKFEATHER jungle, it's kind of like, like you're not as bothered about playing against the CP BLACKFEATHER in the jungle than you would be as a weapon power BLACKFEATHER on this current update, because weapon power BLACKFEATHER is really where people are saying, yeah, he's really, really strong right now. CP BLACKFEATHER is strong, don't get me wrong, but not maybe as strong as the weapon power BLACKFEATHER route. So this isn't as bad for Fnatic. Something else that we haven't really mentioned as well is how good Grace is into heavy melee compositions. You have the Holy Nova, and you saw how devastating that has been in some of these fights for Fnatic, just disengaging every time they clump up onto the Grace and she lands that big Holy Nova stun. Interesting that I was predicting maybe Hegman would level that and overdrive that first, because when you overdrive your Holy Nova, you get the ability to ignore all CC while channeling, which means even the Lance Scythian Wall and so on and so forth, you're going to be able to position that Holy Nova and it's going to stick there. So that's potentially what I was thinking Hegman would do. They're going to catch up Kavalifa.
Valkyrie comes out, good afterburn back, but Kavalifa's still alive with the fountain. Eventually he will fall, and Fnatic can continue to be aggressive, but Tyrus with so much damage. A great Gideon Wall into double impale. Still we see the damage coming out onto Palmatora, and on point hits, but it's not quite enough. Fnatic get their second kill of the fight, and now it's only Hegman left alive.
And you can see how devastating it is when you lock up a weapon power BLACKFEATHER early on. So if you lock up a weapon power KESTREL early on and she gets locked into this chain of CC that the Fnatic roster have brought to the table, it's why you see Kavalifa's had to go for a reflex block. Most weapon power BLACKFEATHERs, they would. I keep saying weapon power BLACKFEATHER. Most weapon power KESTRELs wouldn't even consider a reflex block, but it is absolutely necessary for Kavalifa right now, this early on into his build path, because he is just getting absolutely chain CC'd every single fight. It's almost impossible for him to find range for glimmer shots, impossible for him to even deal damage, because he's constantly trying to run away from this slurry of roots, stuns, repositions that Fnatic are bringing to the table. Hegman has now unlocked his ultimate, the Divine Intervention, which gives you that Holy Shield, reducing damage by, I believe it's 30% now, but it's still a good amount of damage reduction, and that might be the key to keeping Kavalifa alive in these fights.
It definitely could be. I think getting that big heal out of it as well will help you out a lot. We see Kavalifa continually getting caught. We actually have a poison shiv coming out from Techno JJ to try and respond to that, saying, okay, we know you're going to heal up. Let's try and reduce that as much as we can. Tyrus with an infusion popped here. At that level 8 is actually equal level with Palmatora, which is something we didn't see in the last game. Last game, Palmatora was able to snowball away from the SK jungler, but here it's a much more even affair, although Fnatic have that 1,000 gold lead early on.
Well, it's something that the analyst desk were talking about quite extensively, how much investment for Fnatic especially went into these infusions, and Palmatora specifically loves to essentially spend his cash on infusions rather than heavily investing into tier 3 items early on. You can see level 8 got that infusion popped, he's ready to make a fight happen with it, but level 8 on Tyrus now, and you're starting to see the power of the extended range on the on point and how difficult it is for Fnatic to respond to it. This is exactly the point in the game where you felt like SK were going to find their way back in, and now with the on point and the glimmer shots, they've done so much damage to that first turret, and Fnatic are finding it very difficult to even get into range to consider and engage against SK right now.
And if you're Fnatic now, you're thinking of flank opportunities, you're thinking of positioning, you're thinking about how you actually get onto this SK backline. A great Gideon Wall, net toilet there, the Valkyrie comes out as well, but a separated team here from SK. You can see Hegman praying to the gods above, saying, I need divine intervention, but it's not enough, as Fnatic will get another kill for themselves. Now in a 2v3 situation, Fnatic can step forward, they can push into these double range carries from SK, but net toilet is dead. The Rose offensive comes out from Tyrus to help pick up that kill, and Techno JJ and Palmatora need to be so cautious with how they approach this turret.
Execute damage might have been nerfed, but it's still a lot of damage on that Faint of Heart and the Rose offensive too. You saw Tyrus there finishing off the job before the fountain even got popped from Net Toilette. He'll think, even though Fnatic have had the advantage, they've only got a 1,000 gold lead. It's not a substantial gold lead for them at this point in the game. They haven't snowballed as hard as they did last time round. And like we said, the SK composition is starting to come into its strengths against what Fnatic have brought to the table. Fnatic have got, I think, a composition that I would be thinking of as super early war treads with. I'd be thinking of journey boots on Palmotoro as soon as I physically could. The movement speed and the engage of those items is so crucial, in my opinion, to how this needs to be played out. Otherwise, you're just going to be sat there essentially taking volley and flurry of these skill shots that have got such a range on them at this point in time. It's very difficult for you to respond to it.
Just the poke from the on point is devastating here for Fnatic, and they do need to be able to defend. Another impale does connect, but it's only on Tyrus. Look at TechnoJJ, he just gets destroyed, melted out of the fray, and now Palmotoro is in a sticky situation. He falls as well. 2 kills over to SK, and you have to feel this is the beginning of their comeback in this game and in this series against Fnatic.
Yeah, I mean, Fnatic made some incredible early moves into the lane, but they didn't do it often enough. You know, you should have been looking to combo every time the afterburn was up, every time searching for some sort of engage. But unfortunately, Palmotoro locked it into his rotations. They didn't get enough of an early lead. They didn't put enough pressure on Tyrese in the jungle. And like you said, you're hitting item breaking points now. You're hitting the ability to put pressure on these carries from Fnatic from range before committing as well. And Fnatic now find themselves on the losing end of the gold lead. 2,000 immediately picked up after that gold mine. SK, are they beginning another SK reverse sweep here? They've got the gold advantage to work with. This could be doing exactly as they did yesterday against Dynasty, coming back from 1-0 down to fight their way back into the series.
And how much of it comes back to the draft and, you know, giving up this CP BLACKFEATHER and giving up the KESTREL over to SK and picking 2 melee carries for yourself on Fnatic? You know, do they just need to alter 1 or 2 things when they get into that next draft if they end up losing this game and then still have a shot against this SK lineup? Or do you think that they are just defeated by SK now? Do you think that their mental strength will fail if they lose this game?
Fnatic have got a tendency, when things go bad, for things to go continually bad. They're a team that I have known to tilt, especially, you know, on live stage performances. But I think Fnatic have been working on that pretty hard. I think they should find a way back into it. A team definitely needs to have the potential to do so if they're going to be a top tier team. That's when it goes in. He's got the echo.
Yeah, good flank there. Gideon Wall comes out. The second gets blocked by Tyrus. The root does come down, and KEVALIFAR stands at the back of the fight and says, okay, I'll hit you with some glimmer shots from long range. Tyrus looking for another on point. Hits onto Palmotoro, who's trying to just dodge his way around. But look at the Faint of Heart stacks. Tyrus trying to do what he can. There's the reflex spot coming out from Palmotoro as well, and this will be the second turret falling. You have to feel Fnatic just unable to stand up to a long-term fight. TechnoJJ so low as Tyrus runs in. They'll just settle for the turret, and once again SK definitely on the front foot in this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Fnatic. They can't engage. This is why I would have been thinking about war treads. I would have been thinking about movement speed early on, because every 60 seconds, you're going to get that war treads up, and that's going to be a way for you to rush into these fights and try to get immediate pressure down onto KEVALIFAR, try and burst Tyrus before they can poke from range. But Fnatic are getting beaten by a very rapid war of attrition. Every time they start to move up towards this Fnatic SK roster, you get hit by on points, you get hit by glimmer shots, and it's just chunking TechnoJJ and Palmotoro out before they even have a chance to respond. Remember, both of these heroes, both TechnoJJ and Palmotoro, need to be up close and personal to make use of their sustain. Glaive gets passive lifesteal, coupled with the poison shiv, he's got a lot of sustain built into his kit. You generate fortified health. Here's the engage.
All on to Tyrus. Do get him low, down to about half. Great stun.
Oh, look at the damage!
The Valkyrie comes out, and the stealth used immediately by KEVALIFAR. Already TechnoJJ down so low, and KEVALIFAR just dodging around the side of the fight. Palmotoro unable to do anything. Another knockup from Hegman. And that is great play by SK to get the clean ace.
And this looks like it's essentially all she wrote for the Fnatic composition. I don't know what they can do against SK. Let's take a look at the replay here. Again, they think they catch out the BLACKFEATHER, but a Rose Offensive is such a useful tool. A 3-man Holy Nova. We talked about how useful that skill is into heavy melee compositions. They walk straight into an active camo stun from KEVALIFAR. Another Holy Nova to stop the advances of Palmotoro, and SK clean up so easily. It's everything that you got from this composition from SK. So anti-melee focused as well. on-point slows, Holy Nova stuns, active camo traps that you can lay and expect Fnatic to have to walk into if they want to chase the Kestrel down. I just don't feel that Fnatic even have a chance unless they catch out Kvalifar and dive in super quickly with an afterburn or some movement speed from this Rhyme, who's really only sitting on tier 1 boots. Net2elet's caught out, it's going in.
Getting wall comes out, there's the Crucible, but already Net2elet is dead, and Kvalifar lands the active camo stun. So much damage coming out. He's still alive, even through the Valkyrie. Palmator trying to chase him down with Winter Spires. Won't get the kill. The Divine Intervention on Kvalifar. The healing is huge. And once again, SK with an ace, as no member of Fnatic is able to get a kill. This will be the Kraken, and you have to think that's pretty much game for SK.
I think we have touched on so many points throughout this game, and I think we've really been harping on that same note for the last couple of fights because they've all transpired in exactly the same way. SK have an incredible anti-melee dive composition. They just needed to hit that breakpoint at level 8 without getting too far behind, and they did so. Now they're snowballing into the late game. Dragon's Eye broken and finished on Tyrus. He's going to scale up so quickly. Kvalifar nearly at his 4-item build, working towards a tornado trigger. Hegman has got the Echo Divine Intervention, keeping individual carries so incredibly safe in these fights. I don't know how much Fnatic can even do. Even the perfect team fight, catching out Kvalifar and immediately diving onto him, you've still got to burst through a double Divine Intervention, which at this point, given how low on burst you are because you haven't snowballed this Rhyme, feels almost impossible. SK are going to push in. This looks like it could be a lethal Kraken push for this Vein Crystal.
Fnatic basically a full item behind on every single carry. Hegman there in the front line, and the Kraken pushing in as well. SK looking just to try and equalize this series at 1-1 to keep their unbeaten streak alive. Net2elet so low already as SK just continue their push forward. The Kraken will take out that second crystal turret. It's a ridiculous kill for Tyrus as he jumped all the way onto the back line, but already that turret has fallen. The crystal will be the new target for SK. Should be a pretty easy victory for them in the end. They fell behind early on, but they're able to hold out and take the win and equalize the series 1-1 up against Fnatic.
SK, they don't get fade after a single loss. They came back, they outdrafted, in my opinion, Fnatic so hard. I mean, the Glaive was definitely a questionable pick. I know the analyst desk were kind of confused about it. I don't think Glaive's in the best spot right now, but it is a good combination, as you saw with the Lance in the early game. But realistically, SK won it from level 8 when they didn't get too far behind. They got to a point where their composition just trumped everything that Fnatic brought to the table. It was a very, very solid performance from them, and they are probably feeling pretty confident going into this last game. We've got a 3-game series on our hands here, Medic.
Then we have Fnatic up against SK going all the way to 3 games. To break down that game and to lead us into game 3, we're going to hand it back across towards our analysts.
Well, it was close between them during the early game, and Palmator finished with a good scoreline, but we can't say the rest. We can't say the same for the rest of Fnatic. It was SK that managed to take control of the game a few minutes into that one and started to roll things into a victory. Let's break this one down a little bit, gentlemen. What was it that SK had that stopped Fnatic being able to do anything in these fights?
It was like the caster said, once they got to that level 8 point, once the overdriven on point started coming through, that does so much damage from such a long range. And because of the fact that Blackfeather was a crystal Blackfeather, he was able to stay back, and that allowed then the Grace to stay back a little bit longer as well and keep that protection for the Kestrel. That was the one concern we had going into this game, was would they be able to keep the Kestrel protected? And because of that range, because they were able to just stay a little bit further away from the fight and wait to engage, they were able to keep Kestrel safe.
In my opinion, it wasn't as much SK being able to hold on early game as much as it was Fnatic choosing to do the wrong things. They prioritized ganking the lane so much in the early game, and they got the kills, but they weren't able to get too much off of the kills. While instead, if you choose to invade and control the jungle with the strong grind pick, you're able to get ahead on top of getting kills. And that was the biggest mistake that happened for Fnatic. They got a lot of ganks, they got a lot of kills, but they didn't get much off of it. Yeah,
that's that classic conversation. If you can't get the objectives off the kills are pretty much meaningless. Let's take a look at one of the team fights that happened during that game. Around 13 minutes on into this one, or sorry, 14 minutes. This was one of the aces SK managed to pull out the back.
Yeah, this was when SK was really kind of had the game already fully in their control, and you can see that there isn't the damage coming out from the side of Fnatic. You know, Techno JJ almost a non-factor in this game, really, on this glaive, even though they were putting so much priority on trying to get him ahead, trying to help him out early on through the lane. They weren't able to translate that into any sort of advantages, and the glaive just... I don't think glaive is in a very strong spot. You know, we talk about the fact that almost everything is viable. Glaive is one of the few things that I don't think is very viable in Update 2.9.
Well, it just certainly didn't look particularly good in that game. We'll see whether that changes throughout the course of this update. Certainly not convinced myself right now. Let's take a look at what happened at the end of that game as well. Once SK managed to take control, it felt like there was very little that Fnatic could do about it, especially once you've got a few items on that Kestrel. It's so difficult to just survive the damage.
Exactly, and a few items on Grace as well. At this point, SK were so far ahead, both in gold and compositionally, because their team composition scales so much better than that of Fnatic's, and at this point they're so much stronger. People need not forget that Grace is still extremely strong late game, especially when she picks up her Echo. In many different team fights, Kestrel would drop so low, but the heals coming from Grace would keep her alive. On top of that, the Holy Novas, Xgramdel talked about it a lot. You have that ability to lock down all 3 members of Fnatic because they're all melee and they dive on top of you, so it's an easy CC to hit.
We saw that multiple times throughout the game as well, where these skirmishes would be kicking off. The Holy Nova knocks up the entire team, and suddenly everything doesn't seem so easy for the likes of Fnatic. But that is going to be SK now, evening things up in this series. We have a full best of 3 on our hands, boys and girls. It's time to start to talk about the draft going into game number 3. How are we expecting things to change? Because honestly, Fnatic's composition in game 1, very convincing. Game 2, really not so much.
I mean, all they had to do was play something with some range instead of the glaive, and I think Fnatic would have had a much stronger comp. They would have been able to then snowball that lead, have a much more effective late game. So that's where I want to see Fnatic focus on. Just don't go for this glaive pickup again, and they should be okay to go through the draft phase.
I mean, I personally disagree a little bit. I don't think it was the glaive pick. I don't think it was the draft. I think it was how they played it. It seemed like all of a sudden they forgot how to snowball and how to get ahead early on, which is what their comp needed to do to be able to work. And it was because that they weren't able to do that their composition seemed so weak. So it's a matter of execution, a matter of consistency. Fnatic needs to show up like they did in the first game to take the series off of SK.
All right, well, Fnatic going to be banning away the Lyra so that they can grab themselves the ARDAN, but SK, they just won on the BLACKFEATHER, and they're more than happy to grab that one up once again.
Yeah, absolutely. More than happy to grab that. BLACKFEATHER is one of these picks that's going to be extremely hotly contested all throughout this split. Yeah. BLACKFEATHER, Rhyme, Kroll, like those 3 are going to be so hugely focused throughout this split. But Grace is going to be drawing a ban here from Fnatic. So even though it's not a pick that... I mean, that was the first time we've seen Grace show up in a draft throughout yesterday and today, and all of a sudden now Fnatic is just banning it away from them because they just do not want to have that coming through.
Something to talk about also is that this BLACKFEATHER is actually a flex. It can still go to the lane as a weapon power. One of Kivalufar's traditional heroes, one of his best heroes to play in the lane. So it's a very possible threat, and if he does choose to go weapon power in the lane, that is very strong in 2.9. We talk about it a lot, and it's because of the health changes that came on every hero in Vainglory. They have a lot more health, so his execution on his A ability does a lot more damage.
Vox taken away by SK, knowing that that's a pick that Fnatic likes to fall back to, and they haven't used it yet this series. Obviously, it was banned in Game 1. They chose not to use it in Game 2 when they had the option, and SK just going to force them to not be able to have it here in Game number 3. But Fnatic, they have lots of options you can go with this. The ARDAN pairs well with just about everything in the game, so it doesn't really show what you're going to be trying to do whatsoever. And so I'd expect something that could be flexed here just to keep that option available for the side of Fnatic.
The Kestrel is still open. They did well with it today, the first game, and yesterday. They choose to not go for it. They go for the Petal, and it's another flex pick. Petal is actually a hero we saw yesterday on TSN. They played it all 3 matches against Rogue. They played it twice as CP with Frostburn, something that we have criticized, but Von C played it twice with Frostburn. They won once and lost another game, and the third game they played it as weapon power on Best Chuck. So still a strong pick here in 2.9, and it's a flex pick that they can choose to play either in lane or jungle.
And we also saw the Petal heavily prioritized in the Tribe versus Cloud9 series, but Catherine is going to be the option for SK. This is another one that was very heavily focused, and Batiste, as you mentioned, Munch, is available. They could go for that duo if they'd like. See if they do
They
try and make
They
that
did
pairing
play it
happen.
yesterday against Dynasty. Instead, they choose to go for the Rhyme. I mean, it's a very strong jungle matchup. On top of it, they did go for the weapon power BLACKFEATHER. So this is actually a very well-rounded composition coming from SK. Both very strong late game scaling with the BLACKFEATHER in the lane, and very strong early game with the Rhyme in the jungle. And obviously, the Catherine is very reliable in team fights.
And the team fighting is going to be extremely strong for the side of SK. It is a triple melee, so perhaps Fnatic tries to focus their last pick around that fact, but it's a very strong triple melee on the side of SK between the Rhyme and the BLACKFEATHER. Once they get rolling, both of them are very, very difficult to stop and to lock down.
The thing is, they did pick a Rhyme. I'm sorry to interrupt too much, but they did pick a Rhyme into a Petal, which TSM yesterday chose to counter Rhyme with Petal. So Fnatic does have the option to put the Petal in the jungle as CP, play it against the Rhyme, and pick up something in lane for Techno JJ. That definitely seems like a Sky CP coming out in the jungle while they're playing Petal in lane. And Sky CP did get buffs in 2.9.
Yeah, Sky CP, definitely something that we've seen a lot in the course of the Vainglory8 here across the first split. At least we saw it quite a few times. We also saw Weapon Sky, so maybe potential for that, although we did only see that once or twice. How are we feeling about these compositions then? Do we feel like either team has an advantage coming into this?
I don't think it's necessarily a clear-cut advantage, but there are definitely advantages for the side of Fnatic. They can really kite this Rhyme very effectively with the Petal and the Sky. Sky's going to be able to slow up this Rhyme and BLACKFEATHER when they try and run at you. The forward barrage, either you go with weapon power and just have the natural slow, or if you build a Frostburn on the CP route and just have that huge 30% slow at all times.
Especially since they have ARDAN and they can get the Echo for the double gauntlets. However, SK can snowball if they use the Rhyme effectively.
All right, we'll see if they can get that snowball on the roll. It's time to get into the Halcyon Fall for this one. Game number 3 between Fnatic and SK Gaming. Hashtag Vainglory8. Let us know who you're supporting. But let's pass it back over to our casters once again. Medic and Scoundrel, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Munch. I am Medic. I'm joined by Scoundrel. And Scoundrel, I have an important question for you here before we actually get on into the action of this best of 3, this final game. When people talk about snowballing with a Rhyme, do you think they're intentionally making a joke, or do you think it's an unintentional pun that they're playing with there?
I think it's just a byproduct of Rhyme being an ice-focused hero and Snowball being a common term of MOBA. Sorry to ruin your joke.
That makes a lot of sense, because otherwise people are using that pun a lot of the time, and they need to cut back on it. But something else that needs to cut back on is SK's early aggression. Actually, they might be the ones that want to put the early aggression on with this Rhyme pick and the BLACKFEATHER going into the lane here for KOSHKA.
Yeah, I think if you get to the late game and Palmatoro hits his late game Sky build, Sky does so much work if played correctly into this composition that she shouldn't be caught easily. She counters pretty much most members of SK. People argue about the weapon power BLACKFEATHER matchup into the Sky. They're going to go in, Hegman.
Yeah, SK did get the Treant as well. KOSHKA actually jumping quite far forward there. Fnatic realizing they don't want to trade into an Elder Treant buffed SK, so they will just go back into the lane.
Happy to do so as well. Fnatic, again, on the brink of knocking out the current reigning #1 seed in the European VG8. The top contenders for Worlds, for Toilette already forced to use that healing flask. And remember, Europe only gets 1 seed for Worlds this time round. We're only going to have 1 European team heading to Singapore for the World Championships this time round. It is a massive, massive privilege to be that team, but also a huge weight of responsibility. So this is now the proving grounds. The autumn VG8 split is the proving grounds for this European squad to say, we might be the only hope for Europe, but we're going to be a darn good hope, in that position.
KOSHKA jumps forward there. Techno JJ is going to get healed up. He trampolines as well. The healing flask from KOSHKA, and KOSHKA might be the first SK member to fall. Once again, Fnatic with the first blood.
Wow. Baited in by Techno JJ there. And then Techno JJ able to have the reinforcements, just stood very aggressively in that mustache brush. Unsure if KOSHKA was even thinking about a gank taking place at that point in time. Maybe they just thought because of rotations that you'd expect Palmatoro and Toilette to be at the back of their jungle. Maybe they were sharing experience, but definitely got baited in there, did KOSHKA, and again, first blood goes over to Fnatic.
JJ has the trampoline away in the lane, but KOSHKA with the chase of the Vanguard, not quite enough. SK answer with a kill of their own. And it feels very much like Game 2 all over again. Perhaps we saw JJ being a little bit overextended, giving SK a way back into the kills.
Yeah, and you see, obviously, we've got Weapon Power Petal. It's something that has been rising in popularity. A lot of people built it and picked it initially to deal with the heavy Celeste and Scarf meta, where it was so difficult to put pressure on a Celeste and Scarf in fights. So people said, okay, well, technically, our Weapon Power Petal has got the longest attack range in the game when she uses Trampoline. You can build her very much like you build our Weapon Power Kestrel. You build heavy critical strike, and just look to burst them with that very long range, extended base attack range. And again, she kind of kept herself in the meta. Ooh, Power Toro.
Speaking of burst, Palmatoro almost dies there, just about gets out alive with the Vanguard. So does Hegman, both very low, but forcing Palmatoro back is always a good thing for SK, as it means Tyrus can step forward into this jungle, see if there's any camps he can steal away. We'll just take the fronts and has a sizable CS advantage over Palmatoro early on.
Yeah, he has been very heavily farming. I think every Elder Treant has gone over to Tyrus as well, so he's going to take that in his back pocket in terms of his CS advantage. And now he's going to very nicely time his entire rotation. One thing about Ryan that makes him so good in the jungle is that his clear speed is just fantastic. He's got an unbelievably good clear speed compared to most junglers. And obviously that allows him to steal away enemy camps very quickly, also allows him to be aggressive and also clear his own camps super quickly to set up for ganks too. So I didn't quite get the opportunity to steal too much from Palmatoro this time, but again, fronts, you'll take them where you get them, basically, and he did so there.
You just have to steal away what you can. It's kind of the motto of SK, is now they have an 800 gold lead, a lot of that being on KOSHKA farming up incredibly well in the lane, and he is on this Weapon Power Blackfeather this time. We said it's what most people fear the most out of any pick ban at the moment is this Weapon Power Blackfeather. We've seen it banned a lot of times. Have to see how well KOSHKA can pilot it in this game.
SK going to root up Net Toilette here. KOSHKA
going to land.
Going in.
Yeah, there's the Valkyrie as well. Net Toilette's done right at the end. The Winter Spire comes out and eventually SK get the kill. And once again, Fnatic just overstepping their bounds, and SK say, oh no you don't, this side of the jungle is ours. And forcing Fnatic back, taking a kill away as well.
Actually just letting the Catherine walk up and stun as well, because it's interesting that classically you'd always consider Frostburn on Skye an absolute must against the likes of the Catherine, an absolute must against the likes of Ryan, maybe even Weapon Power Blackfeather to an extent. But because Frostburn itself got kind of indirectly nerfed in terms of its overall sort of utility in general weapon CP builds, I'm wondering where Palmatoro will prioritize that in his build, if at all he does prioritize it. I actually do think it could be necessary this game. I do think it would be a good pickup for him, but maybe he just thinks that the CP nerf means the lack of damage output from that item is just not worth the cost at this point in time, as Net Toilette able to escape with the Vanguard. He has picked up again the Heavy Prism and the Eclipse Prism. No telling what that'll be. There is many items he could choose from. It's definitely not going to be Spellfire though, so we can write that one off as it stands. But again, still could work to Frostburn if you wanted to.
Definitely not going to be Sorrow Blade either. I can tell you that for sure. Scoundrel could of course build into any of the variety of CP items that you can get, but Palmatoro is going to trade into KOSHKA here. Serpent's Mask and Eve finished on SK. There's a death from above, doesn't hit onto KOSHKA. Will connect onto Tyrus, and Fnatic trying to trade in a little bit further, but just can't quite get the damage to stick onto SK at the moment.
No, but there isn't that much damage from Palmatoro right now anyway. Tyrus has gone for the first item in Harvest. This though, he's looking for a flank.
He is. We'll be able to get him from the side. There's the Valkyrie. Palmatoro low. Net Toilette rooted up once again. The Winter Spire comes down, but unable to take down the ARDAN. And a lot of this game you have to feel rests on Net Toilette for Fnatic. He's on one of his signature heroes. He knows incredibly well how to pilot this ARDAN, and so if he can land a good gauntlet, if he can get that echo and get those double gauntlets off in a fight, that's where Fnatic are going to be able to take the win.
I think gauntlets are going to be so crucial to limiting the mobility of SK as well. Again, they'll be looking to try and dive to accelerate their position onto the backline of Fnatic. And if you can get those gauntlets, especially with the Echo running very quickly, and limit that SK mobility, that allows Palmatoro and TechnoJ to dance around and find the prime opportunities and prime positioning to land their damage when necessary. It's going to be Dragon's Eye first for Palmatoro. So definitely not thinking that Frostburn is a necessity. I know people really don't like Frostburn right now, but it is a utility item for a reason. It has its place in the meta in specific scenarios, and I don't like the item like on every build. Like, I think the point of going Frostburn every single build is a bit like overkill, but it's a utility item now, and I think if you're not going to use it in the desired scenario, then I don't know. I just would have liked to have seen it, I guess, Medic.
Maybe he wants to utilize his gold a bit more effectively in the early game, and then when he gets to sort of that third, fourth item, maybe then he'll think about getting the Frostburn. But I can understand the reasoning behind it. Having a Frostburn to stop these engages can be very effective, especially since SK have shown that they know how to get these flanks off, that they know exactly how they want to position around this Fnatic roster. Tyra's once again in the bottom of that bush, looking for an opportunity, looking for an opening, looking for a gap into which he can stride triumphantly, as SK have strod many times before. Is strod a word? I don't think strod's a word.
I don't know if it's a word, but
strode.
Is it not strode?
Is the word. Strode,
is it not strode?
It is. It is. Scoundrel.
I have strod.
Well, they're going to strod straight towards this Crystal Sentry and look to remove that from the Halcyon fold. 2 lives remaining. What SK were thinking after game 1 here, we need to win the next 2 to be able to take this best of 3 and get through to the finals. It would be, of course, the first time they've lost in 4 weeks of Vainglory8 action, so would have been a big upset for Fnatic to take the win, but something they need to do if they want to take that European World seed.
What I do like from Palmatoro's build, however, is that he considered the Dragon's Eye. I think it is an item that synergizes so well with Skye's ability to stay in a fight, consistently apply damage, elongated damage with the forward barrage as well. I mean, you generate 3 stacks as it is with the forward barrage if you hit every single proc of it, or at least hit a proc of it every second. Here we go, here's a fight.
Death from Above's going to land. Palmatoro chased off by Kavalifar, who jumps quite deep into the midst of Fnatic. SK continuing on the offensive with that Rose defensive as Kavalifar defends himself. The Valkyrie came out as well. Good Winter Spire onto Techno means he has to pop the healing flask, and yet to see the damage really from Palmatoro. Sadly, we can't see the Dragon's Eye stacks on spec. Otherwise, I'd be really intrigued to see how many stacks he's getting up in these elongated fights. That is a big utility item for him and a big damage item for Fnatic.
We could just count the number of seconds that a team fight
taking place. You count the number of seconds,
and
then just like every now and again shout out a number. Be like 100, 180. How much extra CP has he got? You keep it. You keep the count, and I'll concentrate on the Vainglory action as Techno JJ gets engaged on. Death from Above did come out to try and stop the engage underneath the turret, but SKC more content with the turret than with the kills, and that will be the first turret to fall in this game. 3,000 gold lead for SK as Kavalifar jumps forward once again.
Yeah, just grinding the Fnatic team down with a constant slurry of these Winter Spires coming out from Tyra's. Obviously, the weapon power on point is not doing quite as much damage as those CP ones, but still can be annoying against squishy targets who don't really have any defenses built up, and Techno JJ happens to be one of those. Wonder where Palmatoro will head with his build next. He's got 1,500 gold and an energy battery in tow, so you'd think that just given his items, he might be considering an Eve of Harvest. You could also consider the Broken Myth. It's definitely something that is on the table and on the cards for him. The fact that he hasn't converted to a Void Battery means that I don't think Eve of Harvest is going to be his second item of choice. But it works quite well with Dragon's Eye, because the more CP you get, the more sustain that you're going to get from Eve of Harvest in general. So it's not a bad item to pick up with Dragon's Eye. I guess it will be in his build at some point, but maybe Broken Myth is his second item of choice.
I'll have to wait and see. Across the rest of the heroes, though, Petal, Techno JJ has a Tornado Trigger and a Solar Blade already completed, so he's sitting at 2 completed items. Tyros has the Eve and the Journey Boots to try and chase into Fnatic a little bit more, and Hegman has an Atlas and a Fountain of his own. So there's a sort of a 2-item spike being hit across both of these teams. Actually, Kavalifar has finished up that breaking point as well, so he is going to be devastating if he can get these elongated fights and get onto the backline of Palmatoro and Techno JJ.
Yeah, that's kind of the 2 items that makes Blackfeather so good right now. The Serpent's Mask and the Breaking Point is a very classic build for him, but with Blackfeather being such a nice place in the meta and Breaking Point being such an easy item to stack against low armor values, it just makes him so powerful because, again, he thrives off those itemization choices. And he's going to be churning up damage very hard, but the important point is that he needs to stay in these fights, and, Fnatic do have disengage in bounds. They have that ability with Gauntlet, they've got Suri Strike, they've got Death from Above. You have the trampoline from Techno JJ, the double tornado trigger build, which is so common on the weapon power petal because you want to make the most use out of that time period where you have the extended basic attack range. So you want to get the most attack speed possible. So you go for the double tornado trigger to land as many basic attacks as physically possible off the back of your empowered weapon power area as well. Because remember, when you use trampoline, you get 20% extra flat weapon power, which is fantastic.
Big fight happening in the jungle here. The blast tremor came out. There's a fountain as well. A good gauntlet will stun up Hegman, but already KEVALIFAR's on the back line. Techno JJ having to dodge around. Hegman will be the first to fall. Can Fnatic kite out this fight? Tyra's so low, down to half. He will get taken down as well, but KEVALIFAR gets one in response. Now he's turning his eyes towards Palmetto, but Palmetto says, not today, KEVALIFAR. We may have played together on Team Secret, but it's no secret that I want to
he gets a double kill!
KEVALIFAR turns it around. The captain turns the killer as KEVALIFAR will be able to clean this one up. Net2Elect trying to run away, but KEVALIFAR says, not today, my friend. A triple for KV as SK take the kills and the fight win.
20 breaking point stacks on KEVALIFAR, 860 execute damage on Net2Elect, who has got 9 more than his base armor at level 9. That is why Weapon Power BLACKFEATHER is so contested. That is why he's so hard to shut down at this point in time. Perfectly placed that Rose offensive through the gauntlet to just absolutely crush Palmetto and force him back into the fight, right into Tyrus' range, where Tyrus got a little bit of damage off on that Rhyme, but so good from KEVALIFAR. And he's actually going to go towards what I think will be a Tyrant's monocle as a final item as well, just that icing on the I was about to say delicate and delicious at the same time, like
Delectable is the word I go for if I do that, because you can kind of snake it. But what a heartbreaking moment for Fnatic as well. KEVALIFAR's actually just fighting them 1v3 at the moment. Jumps straight onto Techno JJ. Rose offensives back away. Tyra's now with the chase, looking for the Winter Spire, the route onto Net2Elect, who hasn't got the gauntlet. Still 8 seconds on that. Keep an eye on that cooldown, because that's when Fnatic will want to jump back in. Net2Elect just dodging around the side. Hasn't gone towards the Echo either. It looks like War Tread's next for him. So he's not going to get those double gauntlets down in these fights. A 3,000 gold lead for SK. And what a moment that last fight was. What a turning point for SK as they realize that KEVALIFAR can get these kills and get the team fight wins for them.
Yeah, and he's sitting on a level 12 infusion right now. Tyra is the only one not infused. I imagine he's going to want to take his rotation and then try and pick up an infusion before this Kraken fight, because obviously Kraken being such a massive tool right now in Vainglory to just end the game outright. I mean, we're sitting at a point where only the first turret has gone down with 15 minutes into the game. SK have clawed their way back in these team fights. They've shown that KEVALIFAR with that Rose offensive can get through everything that Fnatic have to offer in terms of heal. Tyra's not yet there. He's not sitting on an infusion. I wonder whether SK will try and avoid the fights without an infusion from Tyra's, because it's a pretty important tool to have, especially when Techno and Palmetto have their own.
Definitely is, and that's what we want to see around this next fight. Which ultimates are up, which items have been completed. You've got a Dragon's Eye just finished on towards Tyra's as well, getting himself a bit of light armor. You've got the Echo for Hegman, so he'll be looking for that double blast tremor. And they're fighting around this Crystal Sentry once again. Fnatic have been on point, trying to take this Crystal Sentry down whenever it's up, so that they can eliminate that threat from the jungle of Fnatic. But here goes Techno JJ, trampolining in. Double tornado trigger finished on that petal as well, so he's outputting a lot of DPS if he can find the right targets.
Yeah, he's also going up against everybody who has at least picked up a little bit of armor, though. Classically, Weapon Power Petal is very good into the squishier targets that don't really consider armor in their builds. Now, I know base armor and armor and items has been nerfed in general, but if you can push yourself to over 100 armor, you're in a really good position against this Weapon Power Petal build. So everybody at least has picked up some armor here, which is going to make Techno JJ's life a little bit more difficult in terms of trying to find those openings with the trampolines.
KEVALIFAR once again on that front line, a good stun on towards Techno JJ. He's going to jump away. There's the blast tremor of his block.
Oh, what a Valkyrie!
Double stun into the silence from the echoed blast tremor, and that is just curtains for Fnatic. Net2Elect's going to get chased down as well. It's going to be a clean ace, a double kill for KEVALIFAR as well, and no less than he deserves and no less than SK deserve with these team fights.
What a Valkyrie from Tyra's. Caught out Palmetto, didn't even have a chance to use a reflex block. It looks like he could have escaped from that, but a double carry stun. That's like the thing of dreams for a Rhyme. You very rarely find that you get that in a teamfight situation, but my goodness, he found it right there. Kavalafar obviously able to capitalize on it so well. It's simple stuff when you have static targets as a Blackfeather. You run in, you Rose offensive on top of them, you build the stacks you find next to you. But so nicely set up, and also Hegman with a fantastically timed silence to actually facilitate that as well. SK, they're on the aggressive now. They're on the snowball front. They've got Kavalafar with a tornado trigger. It is. He's gone for a tornado trigger over the Tyrant's monocle, so more attack speed in the bank as well. Doesn't need any more weapon power, I guess. He's getting 20 stacks almost every single fight, but coat of plates finished from Tyra's. He's gone for the Dragon's Eye Eve of Harvest build. I love this build on the Rhyme, by the way. I actually prefer it over the Shatterglass because Rhyme is an elongated duelist, so therefore he makes the most use out of Dragon's Eye. Damn, SK are looking so good in this right now.
Fnatic just unable to find the answers to it as well. Here comes the Kraken push, looking for that choke point turret, and they should be able to take it down pretty easily. The Death from Above really doesn't even tickle Tyra's. He shakes that one off. And pretty easily, the Blast Rammer comes out just to force Fnatic back. Kraken is down to half, so perhaps we'll see SK back away. They do have a minion wave coming in here as well, and SK looking for that first turret. Do get some good poke down onto it, but the Kraken will eventually fall. The turret going lower. There's the Death from Above as well to chase SK away. That ends the Kraken falling just before it can take down that crystal turret. So SK unable to break the base yet, but right on the cusp of victory in this best of 3.
Yeah, they're at that full weapon power item build with Techno JJ. He's going to shred through that. Palmotoro working towards a broken myth now. He's on a Dragon's Eye Eve of Harvest, so it was the Eve of Harvest that he decided to prioritize. I think that was probably pretty sensible over the broken myth because you needed to have the sustain, but now he's got best of both worlds. He's picked up all 3 items, so that might be a pretty decent point for Palmotoro. That is actually going to significantly increase his damage in these fights. The 4 barrages are going to hurt that much more. Hegman finds the stun.
They do good block there, but there's the gauntlet as well. Techno JJ dodging out to the side, but Kavalafar is having none of that. He gets himself another kill. That's his 7th of the game. And Palmotoro now isolated, caught in a corner by Tyras and Hegman. Tries to jump out with the Suri Strike, but there is no escaping Blackfeather. And there's no escaping SK, who are looking on course for their 4th finals in a row.
Yeah, Kavalafar doesn't mind that any CC is thrown down in front of him. He literally just rose offensive through all of it. A lot of damage coming out of Palmotoro. Kavalafar was actually forced to back off, but SK, they're looking for the win here, Medic.
Yeah, Netulek getting chased down as well. Needs to try and survive, but the ace buff will go across to SK. And with that, they'll be able to win out this game pretty effectively. There is the turret falling. They'll go for the crystal next. Techno JJ's up, but it's a last chance saloon for him. Straight into a Valkyrie. Just stun locked for absolute ages. And that will be the win for SK as they take down Fnatic 2-1.
That kind of almost crushes Fnatic's dreams in terms of trying to fight for that top spot. It was a valiantly fought series, but SK once again find the reverse sweep comeback. It was a composition from Fnatic that if they got it rolling, they could very easily have peeled up against the SK, but SK prioritized movement speed so much. I love this on a Rhyme when you prioritize movement speed to this extent with the journey boot super early on. They found the right engages. Kavalafar played the team fights excellently. We wouldn't expect anything less from a guy that has played so much power Blackfeather in his career. And whilst I think Palmotoro's build was good, in these situations, yes, Frostburn isn't classically built, but it is a utility item for a reason. Maybe it was a consideration that should have been thought about. I'm not saying it was the right consideration, but it's definitely something for food for thought, Medic.
That it is. Well, what a game by SK to take it 2-1. They advance to the finals, and commiserations, of course, to Fnatic. We're going to hand it over to Munch, our analyst, to break down that game and to lead us into the second semi-final of the day.
Thank you very much, guys. And what a game coming out from SK Gaming in the end there. And, this series was a bit of a roller coaster. Fnatic start off strong. Then we have an even game, and then SK finish out the way Fnatic started. It was definitely a convincing victory in the end for SK Gaming. And I mean, I feel like it was a very clear story of just start to end SK in control.
Yeah, this game was all SK from the word go. I mean, Tyres was able to get some advantages early on in the jungle, but Kavalafar on this weapon Blackfeather, there's a reason why this is a pick that we almost associate with Kavalafar at this point. He is so good when he gets this pick in his hands.
Exactly, and the reverse sweep does come through for SK. We expected Fnatic perhaps to be able to pull this series. SK saying, no, we're still going to be the most dominant team